Okay, could you just start by telling me why we are here basically? Gender mainstreaming in education, what's that mean?
Well, that's a very good question. It's about making sure that educational outcomes are equitable. We have equitable educational outcomes on both for both men and women.
But you're an anti-gender, aren't you? Could you explain that a bit?
When I say actually I'm anti-gender, it just means to me that it's a concept that is very cumbersome, it is very abstract, and it's also highly academic. And so therefore, when you look at it, it was supposed to be, gender mainstreaming was supposed to be a tool to achieve gender equality. And to achieve gender equality requires a transformation of society, the wider society. So gender mainstreaming was a tool introduced at the institutional level to ensure that all development interventions have equitable outcomes for both men and women. But because of the difficulty of operationalizing this concept, this cumbersome concept, gender, the tool has now become the goal. Where now when they talk about gender equality, it's all about workshops, conferences, focus groups, awareness raising, and yet no one has ever measured to see decades and decades and decades of gender mainstreaming. What has been the impact, on the wider society? Are we achieving the societal transformation needed to bring about gender equality in this Sierra Leonean society? So that's why when I say I'm anti-gender, I don't think the concept apply. I much rather we focus on women and girls, because that makes it easier for us to understand what are women's needs, what are girls' needs to go to university, for example, to have access to education,
What? But doesn't that imply that boys do not have these issues in terms of education?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. Of course, boys have their own challenges, and that's why for me, that even you just actually supported my push for saying let's focus on the women and girls, because when you say gender, for example, a lot of times they say gender is about women and men. But then the rest of the time, they talk about women, and when they mention men, it's almost as if it's to vilify them, like men are the bad, these men are this. But for me, I think if we do away with this gender, especially when it comes to education and intervention, it will be easier for us to see what do men need, what do women need, what do boys need, what do girls need to have the kind of education they need to live productive lives and to contribute to the national development of their country, as well as their society, as well as their community. So for me, this is key. I think this gender word is so cumbersome. It hides a lot of also gender. The other reason why I'm not a proponent of gender, it hides inequality between women, class. There are other inequalities, handicap. More and more, Sierra Leone has a huge population of handicapped, disabled people. That is not being addressed. We have what they call quote-unquote street children, which I prefer to use the word homeless children. All of those. We have old people in villages, old men in villages. So for me, this gender thing only focuses on the inequality between men and women, and then at the expense of all these other social inequalities. While as if we get rid of this word and just look at either social inequalities or just look at each population, each marginalized population or non-marginalized population, what their needs are, we will be able to come up with solutions that specifically target those each population group's needs and challenges.
Okay, that brings me to this workshop. So I've noticed a wide range of participants: men, women, boys, girls. What are they expected to learn here?
Well, I'm hoping that I have today, the findings and some of the recommendations I have made will provoke thoughts for people to begin to think out of the box and begin to question why, after decades and decades of intervention, we are still having difficulties for women to get access to decision making, for women and girls to get access to education, health, all of these issues are critical. So I'm hoping that through this thought-provoking, like for example, the linking of the child abuse of minor girls and teenage pregnancy and educational attainment for women. Because if majority of our girls are dropping out of school because of pregnancy, then of course we are going to have difficulties finding qualified women to put in decision making. I'm hoping that this would today, at least some of the things I've put on the floor, the thought-provoking recommendation I put on the floor, would help for those who are in charge for promoting, quote unquote, for now, gender equality, would begin to think.
Finally, what are some of the recommendations you've put forward?
Well, for me, the first thing we need to do is two key studies. One, what has been we need a study to look at the intervention to promote women and girls' access to education from 2003 to 2017, to have a baseline data to later evaluate the free and quality education. We need to do a study on women's career paths. Whether you leave secondary school or technical training or university, what are the career paths of women? Because all of that will determine why maybe so many of, quote unquote, so many of our girls don't want to go to school. Because what's the point of me spending 15, 20 years going to school if I got out of school, all I could do is secretarial work or work in a restaurant as a waiter or waitress?
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Bah.
You're welcome.